Well, welcome everybody. This is our next iteration of a sustainability speaker series. Jacob Glickle here from the Sustainability Office. What our goal is to try to educate and spread the word about all the activities going on campus that have anything to do with sustainability and how we're trying to improve our operations and what we're doing around campus. So I'm very excited to have Jeff Wormuth, Rosanna Moliano, and Catherine Walsh here to give us some really good insight into what they've been working on the past few years, past few months, past few years, however long that they've been working on it, but especially with a lot more vigor the past year or so, to give some insight in what some of the changes they're thinking about already making in vendor diversity and where they want to take it over the next few months, few years. So please, we can write some questions you have in the chat, but we're going to have these folks give a presentation, let us know, and then we have a lot of time left over for discussion, questions. I'm really interested to what ideas and things you have to you've seen around the university, things we can do as well. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Jeff. Who's please introduce yourself, everyone, as you talk, and I'll be controlling the slides, so let me know when to move forward.
Yeah, I think move forward, Jacob, because the slide that we inserted in here, was issued by, I know I asked you this and I can't remember, but it really helps frame up why supplier diversity is important in terms of sustainability. And I think you're probably the best person to talk to this one, Jacob.
Yes, thank you. So we are starting a movement here, program to update our climate action plan within the university. Our last one we did was in 2010. And we really want to, see where the university is going and really develop and outline a plan for how we can be leaders in this area. And through a lot of things, through some of the social justice issues coming on, through the way the climate sustainability movement has developed over the past few years, especially, one example, kind of the Green New Deal, is that we really want to think about how to deal with sustainability and resilience. You can't ignore how our society is unequal, how there's environmental sustainability, environmental justice, racial justice, economic justice issues, and that really to solve the climate crisis, it really is a climate justice issue. Really having to bring together and solve the inequalities, try to address these issues together with cohesion, and not trying to break them up one by one. Putting solar panels on a building is great, but how do we ensure that has additional economic benefits that promote a fair and just society as well? So really bringing in vendor diversity really kind of comes to the heart of this aspect, and we're really excited to hear what you guys have been working on the past. I don't even know how long, past year, past months.
I know, long time. Well, you know what, I think, first of all, I want us to go around and introduce ourselves. And so I'll start. My name is Catherine Walsh, and I'm an Associate Vice President in the Facilities Division. And I'll be at Northeastern for 9 years next week, which I can't believe. And so I have been working on supplier diversity the whole time I've been here. And so one of the first things I noticed when I came to Northeastern is we actually had a supplier diversity goal in our construction contracts. And so my previous experience was in the public sector in design and construction and facilities type work. So I have a lot of experience where it is mandated by state and federal laws. And so I had a lot of familiarity with it. And when I was so pleased to see it in our construction contracts. And so we started tracking it over the next year or two. And surprisingly enough, we were doing very well. And so I've been working with procurement and people around the universities since I've been at Northeastern. And I should say that, you know, Rosanna really leads this effort with me, and she's got a woman, Tiffany Kwan, who works with her. And we are fortunate in that the vice president of campus planning and real estate and the vice president of facilities really embrace this and think it's important. So we've had a lot of support. And I would say recently, over the past few years, I started working with Jeff Wormuth in the CFO's office. And he has become a real partner in the last year or two. And so when Jacob asked us to do it a little something, the three of us were sort of a natural group to start talking about this. So with that, I'll let Jeff go, and then Rosanna.
Awesome. Thanks, Catherine and Jacob. One random comment. For whatever reason, Zoom decided Chris Cornell was going to be at the top of my list, and I feel like he should be playing a guitar right now. But
yes.
So we'll have to bring back Chris for another one of those. The other random thing I noticed as we jump into Zoom, is I use Zoom for non-work usually. And so my background is from my last Zoom meeting, which was with Make-A-Wish, because I
love it
for them. So there it is. So anyway, I'm Jeff, Office of the CFO. So any of you that don't know me, I'm a project kind of guy. So I lead, facilitate projects across the university, whatever it is. And in this particular case, this initiative came out of from the president to Tom Nadell, the CFO, to me. And so, but to go to what Catherine is talking about, I'm a huge fan of everything about sustainability and diversity, and I always have been. This is just a chance to actually work with the people that can make it happen. So I'm super excited about this initiative, and we'll talk more about it soon.
Great.
Okay. My name is Rosanna Molinaro. I work in the facilities division, and I oversee contracts and procurement for facilities and campus planning. I joined facilities probably 4 years ago or so. And when I first started, I was uniquely interested in supplier diversity and how we, with such a big spend in facilities and campus planning, how we can do better. And so working with Catherine and the folks within campus planning facilities to really make it happen. And then over time, you know, we've added some people to my team who really help us do the day-to-day, keep track of our spend, and really talk about it with our planners and our project managers. So I'll be speaking a lot about what we do in facilities and campus planning and sort of lessons learned and best practices. So again, Jacob, thank you for organizing this and having us speak today.
And just quickly, you know, how we're going to frame this is we're hoping to talk about a half an hour and then really save time for some questions or for people to just share any thoughts on this or raise their hand because they want to get involved. But, you know, we've asked Jeff to come and talk about this on a university level. And then Rosanna's going to chat about what we've been doing in facilities. And like she said, some of our best practices and some of our challenges. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Jeff.
Thank you. Jacob, can you shift the slide, please? So I'm also going to post something in the chat really quickly. So there's a link in the chat. This is, the link in the chat is the action plan if y'all are not aware of it or haven't seen the most recent version. So when the president came out with an action plan, it's got a whole bunch of components to it that you can see there. This one, though, is specifically one of the sub-bullets underneath the action plan, which is specific to diverse suppliers. And so in an email from the president back in October, the president came out and said, we'll increase procurement for businesses, designers, women, and minority-owned, with special emphasis on Black-owned. And he gave a very specific target, which is interesting. We usually don't get such specific goals, but this is cool because it's measurable, and there it is. So that email came out from President Aoun. Very quickly after that, in the email and in the action plan, you'll see that one got assigned to Tom Nadell. So Tom reached out to me and asked if I could facilitate a group. And it's an important to note, I don't have any expertise on this other than what I've learned over the years. So my role in this is to bring together folks across the university and anyone outside the university who's really well informed, educated on this, so we can figure out a way to collaborate and make this happen. So we certainly have support from the very top on this.
Yeah.
Next, please. So what have we done so far? And so Catherine and I are kind of co-leading this, and first thing we thought we would do is I met with Catherine to see what facilities have been doing for the last decade or more, and it's pretty impressive. And so that was an important perspective, but we wanted to learn across the university what's going on, to both communicate what we're trying to accomplish and figure out what people are doing and figuring out how we can do it. So the categories of kind of what we've done, we went out and listened. And so I'll start with the blue category. Process, we call it owner in parentheses. Most business processes have an owner. So procurement, really, they kind of own the vendor file, the initial vendor relationship. So we talked a lot to procurement about their role in this, what's working, what's not working. As we define in the slide, this is about listening and learning. So we just talked to each group, what's working, what's not working, what would you like to see better? So procurement was a group that we talked to a lot. I'll just go down around so I can save purple for last. Best practices, we always like to not just limit ourselves to what we know, even across the university. And so Pacesetters want someone, Rosanna or Catherine will talk about that a little more later. Boston Consortium, we're a member of the Boston Consortium, so there's a bunch of other schools in the area that do this stuff. EAB is Educational Advisory Board, they do research. So we're trying to learn outside of the university too. What's the best way to go about this and how can we best succeed? The red, key stakeholders, too many to mention here, but we kicked this off with a pretty large group. Members from each of the colleges, John Armendara's group, facilities group. So we had, I don't know, 22 people or so in a room where we just literally said, here's what we're trying to do. Talk to us, please. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. And so that was an important set of stakeholders there. And then we always care about data, right? So data and reporting, we'll get to what the data was, but we have community affairs was part of this group we talked to because they have an important reporting component to the city. Facilities does a lot of important reporting, so they're there as well. Des Moines McKim has an entire subgroup, and I see at least one person on the call from that group. So we've been working with them as well to see what's going on in their subcommittee. And then UDS, Rana's group, they also often create Tableau dashboards that go out to SLT. So they're really good from a reporting perspective. So we'll be working with them to help us with leadership dashboards. And then, of course, ITS, we've got data. We've got to figure out a way to bring it together and report. So we've had a number of initial meetings with all of those people to get all those perspectives. Next, please. So what did we learn? Based on all of those discussions, we're still in the discovery stage, although we're getting close to the end of that. But what did we learn? Well, there are some things that are working. For sure, there are pockets of excellence. Facilities is absolutely one of those groups. Des Moines McKim is one of those groups, and there's others. So we've learned that what we're trying to do on a larger basis is already being done on a smaller basis in other places. So that's very, it's good to see. Lots of enthusiasm, desire to be part of this. This is cool. Some of the initiatives that I end up working on, not so enthusiastic. People aren't always that enthusiastic about doing what we're trying to do. So it's really cool to see that the president is asking us to do this and most people are all in. So that's super positive. So what did we learn? Some high level opportunities for improvement. What can we do to make this better? So internally within Northeastern, in order to even know, the ultimate goal that the president brought out was increased spend, right, against these vendor types. So in order to be able to accomplish that, we got to know who these vendors are. So we need a better process to allow us to identify these types of vendors, track these types of vendors, report against them. So we need to improve there. And that's one that ties back to when you talk about owners. Procurement really owns the vendor file, so they will help us on that one. Make it easier for buyers to identify diverse vendors at the point of purchase. This was a super important point. We have a lot of decentralized buying at the university, as you all know, and there's a bunch of different ways people can buy. They can use my marketplace, they can use a requisition, they can do all sorts of things. And we need to make it easier for people to know what's available before they make the purchase so that we can actually increase our spend that way. So that came through loudly and clearly. In simplifying reporting and data access, we learned pretty quickly also that there's multiple data sources, even for the spend data itself. There's Concur data, there's Banner data, there's tier 2 data. So we have to kind of behind the curtain, make sure that we can align the data and make it simple to understand, see, report again. So those are some opportunities for improvement internally. Externally, there were a lot of really good ideas around suppliers on how can we make it easier for suppliers to make it through the process, to get into our ecosystem and get visibility to our buyers. So there's a lot of good ideas on how we can make that happen. And one other one that I didn't have here that I want to add too is just to change the culture and change the way people think. I even myself, we go to buy something, we want to make it so people think right at that point, let's make sure that we at least look at the possibilities of diverse vendors there as an automatic step. So those were the initial takeaways, and there's a lot more detail behind that, but that's what we've heard and where we're going. Next, please. Cool. So we've done a lot of initial legwork, done a lot of discovery. What are we going to do? So what is the initiative actually going to look like? At a super high level, we kind of have 3 tracks of work. So again, in order to accomplish the goal of doubling spend over the next 5 years against the groups that we are targeting, we're going to do these 3 sets of work. So project management people can look at these as work packages. But I want to make a note up at the top again, learn from and build on the success of groups like facilities. We don't want to start from scratch. A lot of y'all are doing a really good job of this. We want to learn from that and build on it. So the 3 sets of work, one is around data and reporting, and this is kind of a foundation plumbing behind the curtain kind of thing. So we need to get vendor attributes. We need to code them, keep them up to date. We need to get spend data and align it and make it available for reporting. And we need to be able to auto-generate certain reports and make it easier for reporting. So that's one group. So the types of people working on that will be IT folks, UDS folks, procurement folks. Track 1. Track 2 is around measuring performance. If we're ever going to get to doubling, we have to figure out who the groups are that have spend, give them goals and measure against that. So that's kind of a big deal. And even though Tom is leading this, we've got to work with the provost and the chancellor and other folks to say, there's some big spends in certain groups. What are the goals? How are we going to define and communicate those goals? And how are we going to measure that people are actually attaining those? So that'll be a different group of people, right, to make that happen. And then the third piece is supplier capacity building. So again, identifying high quality suppliers who can supply us with the goods and services to help us do what we do, right? And so this is yet another group of people that are good at this. So how can we do this? How can we identify these folks? What are ways we can make it easier for them to get on board? And some of the names of the people that have popped up there, John Armendaris has a lot of history there, Eric Woods has a lot of history there. So these are 3 different sets of work that we'll be going through. And when they all come together at the end, that will allow us to achieve our goal, which is doubling spend over time. So that's how we're going to go about it. Not sure. Okay, so that's kind of at a super high level, and it might be a decent, well, I'll defer to Catherine or whatever. That's high level university-wide, what we're doing, who's involved. We'll continue to involve people as we go. That's that piece. So that's all I have for my section.
I think that's perfect.
Into facilities,
Yeah.
specifically about how they do it, and then we can circle back to questions as we go.
Sure.
After, yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Rosanna.
Thank you, Jeff. So as Jeff said, we have a high level understanding of what's going on with the university, what our next steps are, and how we're going to make this happen. And, I wanted to share on behalf of facilities, campus planning, sort of what we're doing, best practices. But in order to get there, we need to sort of frame this. Where did this come from? How did our numbers develop? How did the university make these commitments, et cetera? So a lot of our supplier diversity goals come from our institutional master plan and our community benefits package. And so this is the institutional master plan is what's used for the university, or the document that the university plans projects and next phases of building, et cetera, to grow the university. And part of that is a community benefits package. That's part of it that comes out of a collaboration agreement with the Boston Redevelopment Authority. And so back in 2015, the university and the authority entered into a collaboration agreement, and that's where we came up with the goals and other community benefits in exchange for being able to develop space and along Columbus Avenue, and to really work and show our commitment to working with our community. So out of the collaboration agreement, the university agreed to increase our overall spend over the next 10 years by 20% of discretionary spend with small local businesses, and 12% with minority and women owned businesses. And so as a piece of that spending, design and construction, specifically campus planning and facilities, have some further goals that are a little bit broader or bigger than the overall spend. So in design and construction, in facilities, we've committed to spend on IMP projects, which are the projects that are along Columbus Avenue, for example, committing to spend 30% of our design and construction costs with minority businesses, and 10% of design and construction costs with women-owned businesses. And then in addition, we've also agreed that for all construction projects that we would hire 51% Boston residents, 35% minorities, and 10% women. And so that gets we work on that with with the construction manager that's overseeing any particular construction project under the IMP. And we track that sort of separately, but all comes together under the community benefits. And then lastly, for non-IMP projects, we also agreed to commit to spending 10% of design and construction costs with minority and women-owned businesses. And so Catherine sort of spoke about when she first arrived at the university 9 years ago, and sort of what we were doing in facilities when these requirements were agreed to back in 2015. We sort of thought about it a little bit more in-house and decided that we in facilities and campus planning would increase our commitment from 10% of 10% of our design and construction spend related to non-IMP projects, and increase that to 12%, and then also include small local businesses. And then in the last year or so, we've included veteran-owned businesses. So we track and we report all of that in-house. And then there are other benefits that are related to the institutional master plan and the collaboration agreement. And so that's, a college readiness program that's specifically related to students, to Boston public school students in a variety of zip codes that cover the Fenway, sorry, I need to look at my notes for this one. The Fenway, Mission Hill, Roxbury, South End, and Jamaica Plain. And so we've agreed to organize and hold college readiness preparation events. We've set aside base needs scholarships for students in that community, and then also priority admissions process as well. And so also along the lines of community benefits, we've also agreed to some requirements around hiring people in that same zip code, same neighborhood, over by 3%, 3 to 5% over a certain number of years, and then also encourage all of our vendors that we work with at the university to hire people in those local neighborhoods so that they, obtain jobs and continue to work and do business with the university. We've also agreed to employment training and educational programs. We also host annually a supplier diversity vendor fair. Procurement Services does a wonderful job organizing that every year. It usually happens in August. It's a great way for folks within procurement services, facilities, campus planning, other divisions at the university, and other partners and institutions in Boston to come and meet with diverse suppliers. And it's a way to interact, network, and generate a pipeline of diverse suppliers. And then also holding diverse job fairs as well. And then in the community benefits, we've also agreed to build more student housing and to bring students into Northeastern dormitories instead of being in apartments to help with the affordable housing problem that we see in Boston, and is, you know, specifically is difficult and a hot topic right now, especially in our local community around Northeastern. And then also facilitating community-based businesses on the Northeastern campus, having a space using our facilities as a way to share and engage with our community partners so that they can build their businesses. And then lastly, Northeastern Crossing was developed out of the community benefits as well, as a way to have a center for community engagement, event space, etc. And then the last piece, and I think a very important piece of the community benefits, is the accountability piece. So on all of the community benefits that I discussed and our overall goals in design and construction and university spend goals, we're required to report on those annually to the city. And so facilities works closely with procurement services on our spend, and we specifically in design and construction, on the design and construction spend, we primarily see our diverse spend at the tier 2 number. So we manage that in-house, we share that with procurement services, and it's reported out. I can share a link to where the community benefits reports are housed on the university website, and they have the last maybe 4 or 5 years on the website, and I can share that after I'm speaking with everyone. Jacob, you can go to the next slide. Okay, and so as we were talking about the university-wide diverse spend, so this is a graphic that demonstrates the last 3 years of our annual diverse spend. And this is on behalf of the entire university. Procurement services generated this report. It includes all tier 1, tier 2 spend, excludes credit card purchases. And so as a reminder from previous slide, our overall diverse goal with the city is 20% of our discretionary spend with small local businesses and 12% with minority women owned businesses. And so sort of breaking down, I know this is a big overall graphic, but for example, for fiscal year 19, so we spent the university spent $75 million with diverse vendors, and $15.3 million of that spend is direct spend that's generated from procurement services. To understand the spend that facilities and campus planning contribute to the diverse spend, our number, which includes tier 1 and tier 2 spending in that $75 million, facilities and campus planning spent $40.2 million with minority and women-owned firms and $34.8 million with small local owned firms. So just to give some idea of why, of where we're coming from in facilities and campus planning, what our spend looks like, and how we contribute with our tier 2 reporting. Jacob, could you go to the next slide? Thank you. And so breaking that down a little bit more, this is an overview of our commitment in design and construction annual spend. And so when we report out in the community benefits, we report out on our IMP related spend and our non-IMP related spend. And so as you can see, so for example, just to frame what an IMP project is, the ISCC building, ISCC pedestrian crossing, Carter Field playground, and the new EXP building that we broke ground on recently. So for those projects, you know, this is our last fiscal year 18, 19, and 20 expenditures with minority owned and women owned businesses. And our IMP goal is also noted here as well. And so I'm sure all of you are looking and wondering why the fiscal year 20 number is so much smaller than the rest of the years. And that's specifically because the ISCC building is substantially completed, and there's all the work is almost completed there. The pedestrian crossing bridge is complete, and the Carter playground project is complete. So for those reasons, our IMP diverse spend has dropped significantly between fiscal year 19 and 20. But the good news is EXP broke ground in the last year. So we anticipate seeing that diverse spend for IMP related projects to increase. Looking at our non-IMP numbers, so that's all our other projects, all our other design and construction costs and projects that are around the university that are not IMP. And so on those, we report out on our minority women and small local business spend, and that goal is 10%. And as you can see, fiscal year 20 was slightly reduced as well, but that is related to the pandemic and a freeze on spending and the reduction of projects that we had. So we're hoping over the next year we'll see an increase. But these numbers and the percentages really are related to our tier 2 reporting that we track and report on internally from facilities. So Jacob, next slide. Thank you. So Jeff mentioned a little bit earlier that one of our best practices as we're developing more sophisticated supplier diversity goals is working with other organizations and partnerships outside of the university. So one organization that we are really heavily involved with in facilities is the Pacesetters Program. And the Pacesetters Program is run and overseen by the Boston Chamber of Commerce. It is committed to increasing minority business spent to developing and increasing minority businesses across the university, across the state. And so and Northeastern University is one of the founding members that are involved. And so the theory behind, or the mission behind Pacesetters, is that there are several anchor institutions that are involved with the organization that want to use their large procurement power to work to increase minority businesses, commitments with minority businesses, and help them to build and to compete across the Commonwealth. And so this year, Pacesetters redeveloped or re-envisioned what their vision and their goal is. And I think it's really interesting that their vision over the next 10 years, or in one generation, is to close the racial wealth gap, to increase minority business spend or contracts by 10% with government and other businesses within 5 years, and then increase annual revenue of minority-owned firms within 5 years. And so we are, as part of our commitment and as part of our membership with Pacesetters, we report out on our spend, our diverse spend. We meet new diverse suppliers. It's one of the greatest benefits of this organization and this partnership is that we get to meet fresh, diverse suppliers. And so from a facilities standpoint, when we meet new businesses, we connect them with folks within facilities. If we meet diverse businesses that are not related to facilities but related to the university, we'll share them across divisions. And our procurement services is also a member of Pacesetters, and so we collaborate together in sort of our pipeline, or supplier diversity pipeline there. But what's another great feature about this is that we share best practices amongst the institutions. Most recently, we started sharing our master diverse lists with one another, and sort of sharing who's a great vendor to work with, who's had success with another vendor. Does someone have a recommendation for specific services? And so it's a great way to collaborate and share resources together. And then I mentioned a little bit earlier is reporting requirement. And so we're required to report out on our annual diverse spend. And so we're held accountable, and that we're showing our commitment to their vision, their goal, which is a shared vision and goal for the university. So overall, this is, one of our, in my opinion, a great partnership and association that we belong to. So, and then one last thing to mention, And so some highlights out of Pacesetters. So we've been working with a cleaning company, Done Right Building Services, who's a member of Pacesetters, and they had a small scope of work with us a couple years ago under another cleaning contractor. And as a result of that, they've taken over additional work with us and have earned their own contract of specific portion of services. And so that's a great way to see them grow over the years. We recently awarded Cerro a composting contract, a multi-year composting contract, and they're another Pacesetter supplier. And then, and lastly, over the last year, we also awarded a diverse architecture firm that we met through the Pacesetters Program Dream Collaborative. So it's a great way to meet diverse suppliers and, introduce them to the university, get them work. And, it's interesting to just, it's nice to see them grow over the years. So Jacob, next slide. Okay, so a little bit of best practices and what we're doing specifically in facilities to incorporate our diverse supplier goals. So number one, at the request for proposal stage, we include a section that specifically states what our goals are for that project. And so for almost all of our projects, we include the 12% minority, women, veterans, small local business participation goal. And then for design and construction projects, we also include the tier 2 requirement for diverse subcontractor participation goals. So what we do is we sort of push our goals from the direct contractor to the subcontractor. And there's we include a schedule that tracks that, and the contractor is responsible for supplying us with that information and affirming that information is accurate. And then so in the event we're issuing an RFP that's related to an IMP project, we adjust our goals to reflect the 30% minority and 10% women-owned business goals. And lastly, we custom tailor our RFPs to reflect the location that we're looking for services, whether it's a regional network or on the global network. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the last bullet point here. Something new that we added over, I want to say maybe the last year, is a requirement for all bidders to supply us with a diversity and inclusion statement. And so what we look for here is for bidders to provide a statement about diversity and inclusion practices that they're utilizing in their firm culture, hiring practices, promotion practices, how they'll apply diversity and inclusion to a specific project or in the surrounding community. And we sort of tailor that again, depending on the project of what we're looking for. And then lastly, minority, women, veterans, small local business definition and certification. So in our request for in our RFPs, we include a definition of what what the agency's definition is of, or a particular agency's definition is for the certification, so that we're consistent in how we track and maintain our records for diverse suppliers. So for example, a Massachusetts-based RFP would include language that contains the definition that a minority business or a woman-owned business is a certified business with the Massachusetts Supplier Diversity Office, for example. And then if we are issuing an RFP, and we issued an RFP recently in Vancouver, so we would adjust that to say that a minority business is a business that is certified by the Canadian Aboriginal and Minority Supplier Council. So just sort of example of how we're trying to extend that to the global network and regional networks, and we're tracking and reporting that to the extent that we can. Next slide, Jacob. Thank you. Okay, so these are some steps that we recently, or in the last year or so, that we've really been focusing on to move our plan forward, or to to increase our diversity, our supplier diversity, and really get commitment across our organization, our divisions. And so one thing we've identified is planning, having more time to plan for opportunities to include diverse suppliers. So when my team is linked, connected with early, if project managers or planners connect with us early, it gives us time to develop or suggest diverse suppliers to include on a bid list. It also helps us to review RFP materials and scope documents to make sure that there's no exclusionary language in those documents, and also gives us an opportunity to be a little bit more mindful about how we plan to procure certain services. And then that planning stage leads up to a well-written, well-drafted, thoughtful RFP and RFP process. So something else that we recently incorporated into our procurement is requiring diverse suppliers be included on a bid list. To the extent that we have diverse suppliers identified and qualified to do the services, we require a minimum of 2. There are times where maybe we don't have 2 identified, but we know internally for our team that maybe we'll do some more research. We'll reach out to our partner institutions. We'll reach out to procurement to see if they can help us locate some for future RFPs, and just sort of being mindful there. And then we also make sure that we also make sure there's a requirement in the RFP that the diversity and inclusion statement is a requirement to be provided so that the bidder is deemed responsive. And then other areas that we're looking to explore is adding weighted criteria to some of the diversity and inclusion requirements we have in our RFP to really ensure that they're meaningful and abided by. And lastly, something else that we're looking at in an RFP stage is challenging our bidders to think outside the box. And so, for example, for construction management projects, challenging our construction managers and general contractors to work with diverse general contractors at a prime level, because that helps them to build capacity. It helps them to build a good relationship with the university, and it's beneficial for everyone. And then lastly, reporting and tracking. And so this has been a difficult endeavor over the last several years, and Catherine knows even more than me. And so we recognize that tracking and reporting is difficult. And specifically for us, we spend a lot of our time tracking and reporting tier 2 numbers and subcontractor numbers. And that means making sure that our reporting schedules are attached to contracts, that we're receiving them when they're attached to contracts, that they're processed in payment applications, they're quantified in payment applications, and that our construction managers, for example, are actually working with the businesses that they said they are, and we track that through spending. And this also requires additional systems and consistency, and not just consistency for us, but consistency for the university, and understanding that we're all reporting on the same parameters, requirements, timelines, etc. So the last year or so, we did a deep dive into our reporting and tracking and really updated it to make sure that it was consistent with procurement services, and it was a worthwhile endeavor for us. And then last one, Jacob. Oh, sorry, second to last one. And I realized 15 minutes left. I'm going to talk really quick so there can be some time for questions. And so resources and best practices, and these are just things that we've identified over the years that would be great for the university to consider as we're looking to explore working on this commitment together at the university level. And so master diverse vendor lists. And so I think Jeff spoke about this a little bit earlier, but the list that has all the information related to diverse vendors so that people who have buying power are able to make an informed decision and include diverse vendors in their procurement. And so what we're doing in facilities right now, and I think this actually stemmed, I think, from folks in Demore McKim who asked about this and reached out to procurement and to facilities. And we all shared our lists and put together a master list. And so my team's been working really hard to develop an even broader list. And our ultimate goal, and we see this as a low-hanging fruit that can benefit the entire university, is creating a diverse list that staff and faculty can use that sort of has services they'd be interested in using, and then also a student-focused master diverse list. So we're working through that in my group and hoping to make that available to the university. And then again, incorporating diverse suppliers in the bid list. Having time to plan and think about who you plan to include in your procurement process is also incredibly important. Supplier diversity point of contact. And so I think this one I think can be almost our most challenging piece, because we don't have one person that's a point of contact, and sort of my entire team, Catherine included, we spend a lot of time working with diverse suppliers, connecting them to the right folks within facilities, campus planning, fielding phone calls, follow-up questions, getting them into our system, etc. And so having one or two supplier diversity contacts would be incredibly helpful. It really is someone's full-time job. And then lastly, do not underestimate the power of collaborating with other higher education institutions, agencies, community partners, etc. We, over the last couple of years, I think we've learned so much just by talking about it. And I've been using this example a lot lately, but I was in a construction management interview looking to, award a new construction manager on a project. And I always attend those meetings and I always bring up our goals and, sort of try to challenge, see how they're thinking. Most of the time I get the same response. And with this one specific construction manager, they approached it as almost in a way to collaborate. They were like, we'd love for you to share your list with us. We'd love to talk offline. Even if we don't get this project, we want to work together. We're in this together. And it was really refreshing to hear a construction manager talk that way and really think, and especially over the last year. So supplier diversity is really trending in the right direction, and it's really great to see. And lastly, the biggest thing we can do, we've learned in facilities, and I think is applicable from a university perspective as well, is reducing barriers to entry. And it seems, I think sometimes we don't think about it the same, we're not thinking about it always the same way, but being able to compete and have the same opportunities for diverse suppliers is really important to help them to be awarded contracts and continue and additional work, whether it's with us or other places. So one thing in facilities that we've done in order to reduce barriers to entry is reevaluating some of our terms. So for example, payment terms for the university is 35, net 35. There are times where we have some flexibility in changing those. For example, we work with several diverse painters on summer painting projects in the residential and academic dorms. They need to hire a lot of contractors to come work with them in order to work for us. And so what we've done over the years is negotiated net zero payment terms with them, so they can get fast turnaround, fast payment, so their payroll, so their payroll stays above board and they're able to pay for the additional labor that they've hired. Another area is insurance requirements. And so oftentimes diverse and small businesses feel like they can't compete for work because they can't achieve or they're not able to obtain insurance coverage limits like an institute, like similar to the ones that we require. And so over my time here, over the last few years with facilities, I've developed a great relationship with our risk services department. And so when this question or an issue pops up related to insurance, we'll reach out and see if we can try to address or adjust those terms. And then let's see. Well, I feel like I'm running out of time, but I have too much to say. So I'm going to just leave providing resources is, sorry. Okay. So providing resources is another area, and being able to have a point of contact for diverse suppliers, somebody who can help them navigate being added into our systems, knowing when opportunities are coming up, etc. Requiring we're requiring our bid lists to be diverse as well. And then last is prioritizing diverse firms. And so I think this is the one that we just is the best one to end on, and biggest takeaway is just making sure that you're being mindful and planning for your procurement needs, and making sure you're including diverse firms. And if you're really interested in doing so and you don't have contacts with them, you can reach out to procurement services and they can help you develop a list. You know, you can reach out to any of us in facilities, and if we have contacts, we'll help you. And know that we can only succeed if we can do it together and we collaborate. So with that, in short amount of time, I'm sorry for questions.
Well, Anne had a really good question in the chat. And it's the age-old question about addressable spend. So many institutions define addressable spend in different ways. And so in general, it's you look at your category of spend and you determine if there is any diverse vendors in that category. And if there is, it falls into addressable spend. Typically, the type of things that get carved out of the overall addressable spend is salary and benefits. The Red Sox, they're one of the Pacesetters with us, and they always have some really great stuff that gets carved out of it. So all of their equipment, they have to buy special baseballs, special bats, and there are no diverse suppliers in that space. So they carve that out. And so back about 4 or 5 years ago, procurement determined that we had about 185 million. And so that's something that this group, Jeff and I are working on, really want to take a good look at, because we haven't looked at it in a few years. And I think we need to really establish whether or not that is the right number. And so, if you look at the overall university spend, it's about $900 million, but we're only saying a little under 200 million, it would be appropriate for a diverse spend. So I think we just haven't reality checked that in a while. And also, we have more people than just facilities who are doing this. So I think the number is going to be more well informed. So I think the devil is always in the details about how you report these. And that's why I'm so happy to be partnering with Jeff Wormuth, because he's totally a data guy. And a lot of this is getting it right, but documenting it so that we can replicate it each year, so that every year as we're reporting, we're comparing apples to apples. And if we make a change to basic our methodology, we should document that in some way, shape, or form, so that we can explain why our numbers may have gone up or have gone down. So data, I think Rosanna hit the nail on the head. It is really a challenge. Like, we've been doing this for like 9 years, and we're still struggling with trying to automate this and trying to make our data calculation consistent every year. And I know we don't have a lot of resources, but my guess is we have more resources than anybody else across the university, and we're struggling with it. So it's a journey, and we've been on it a while, and we want some more company and we want some more guidance. I'm glad Jeff came on camera.
Yeah, this is super exciting. We can definitely collaborate, bring people together to do this more broadly. There's no doubt, and data will be an important part of this. There's a couple other questions in the chat about when is this going to be a reality. The timing of this is a little bit interesting in that finance is in the process of replacing Mike Mack, so they're bringing in a new lead for procurement, and that person will be a key here. And so we don't want to run too far ahead of that before this new person is in. I fully expect that person will bring not only experience in this area, but knowledge of the area. And so they are a key person that we need. But this is you know, President Owens asking you about this. This is real. This is going to happen for sure. And we'll be updating the community as we go. We'll be as open and transparent as we can about this. I think Jeannie or somebody asked
Yeah.
about ways to reduce the barriers to entry. We've heard some ideas. They're pretty raw right now, so we'll come back to it with a little more detail. But it has to do with a couple of things. One is getting certified. How can you get certified? Is there a cost to getting certified? There's things around that. There's other things just around how can they get noticed, right? And so we're going to do a data analysis to figure out. Well, a couple of folks, I think Rosanna and Catherine both have talked about addressable spend. We got to figure out what addressable spend is in the university, align it to these types of vendors. And once we do that, it's figure out who these folks are and give them a chance, right? So we will give you more specifics about that as we go. If anyone has ideas on that, we're happy to hear them as well.
So I actually have a little bit of an add to that, because one of the things that we talked about, I participated on the interviews with people, and a lot of organizations have registration in their procurement groups. And so there is the ability to self-register as interested in doing business with Northeastern. And so, you know, this ties into Mark's question. Like, do we go out and find vendors, or do we make a broad cry for diverse vendors and they can self-register? You know, there obviously there'd have to be some sort of certification check or something like that. But if we could sort of flip it around where, you know, diverse vendors could call on us and pre-register, I think that would be really good. You know, one of the improvements Terry Waggett wants to make in, you know, the CFO's office is looking at our systems for procurement and accounts payable. And I have no doubt that supplier diversity is on everybody's radar screen. And I'll tell you, all the candidates were amazing. They came from companies who had robust supplier diversity programs, and they all seem to really understand the importance of it.
And then, Catherine, I was just going to piggyback on an answer for Janine's question. And at least internally, Janine, in facilities and campus planning, utilizing our team as a point of contact to help folks navigate the diverse supplier system, working with us and navigate our processes. And then also we're anticipating seeing, again, low-hanging fruit, the master diverse supplier list that we plan to share, you know, facilities, campus planning wide, and then hope to share one with the greater university as well. And those are sort of just right now, early resources available for reducing barriers to entries. We're also looking at requiring, or at least in terms of certifications for diverse firms, looking at requiring the least expensive or restrictive certifications. I think that's another important part, because there are some organizations out there that require annual fee to stay certified. And for example, the Commonwealth Supplier Diversity Office, it's a free certification. So I think those are ways we have to think about, you know, our diverse suppliers and how they can work with us or better, or how we can work with them better, frankly.
So it's 2 o'clock now. Thanks, Mark. Well, thank you, everybody. This has been a pleasure. You know, we love to talk about it. We love to get more people involved in it. And so I really appreciate everybody's time. And if you guys have specific questions, facility and campus planning are more than welcome to help out. And I know Jeff will be knocking on all of your doors as well. Jacob, did you want to add anything?
No, thank you all for coming. We're going to be posting this online. We're going to have a website on facilities for all these speaker series, so you can, you know, forward this around if people have any questions. But reach out to any of us if you have any further questions. And thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to Catherine, Rosanna, and Jeff for this lovely presentation. I learned so much going through this whole process, and I can't wait to see what's coming next.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for having us, and thank you everyone who attended.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you guys. This was great.
Thank you.